We're joined now by our Senior Advisor for National Security and Foreign Policy, Ric Grenell. The President of the United States yesterday announced that to the business leaders in our community and to the world that America needs to be prepared for massive cyber attacks from Russia. So I'm going to go right to Ric on this. I mean, Ric, when Americans hear that, we realize now that means every aspect of our life, from how we speak to how we communicate to how we access our bank accounts, everything we do is somehow connected to something that could be hacked. But this kind of announcement from our intelligence community is telling the president this is coming, or they're already trying to do it. What kind of scale would this be if you're already getting out in front and saying this is going to happen?
Well, obviously, we know that hacking is a problem. The intelligence community watches it closely. But here's the shocking news, Jordan, is that the responsibility is on the private companies. Your bank, for instance, where you get your energy, electricity, all of those private sector companies or local companies in some cases, they are responsible. It's not the federal government. The federal government can somehow benchmark or give warnings, but the hacking goes into the accounts of largely, if not exclusively, private companies. So we have to assume that the private companies are spending the money to make sure that they can block or guard against these hackers. And this is a very difficult job because I think a lot of medium-sized companies that don't have the money, they just assume that, the services that they purchase from some other entity are good enough. And in many cases, they're not good enough. I think we've also got too many people in the public that think it's the government's responsibility to secure all of your systems, and it's not.
So, Ric, when you were the DNI, I mean, obviously this issue of cyber attacks was in your domain. People are saying, and I think there's truth to this, that a cyber attack is a form of warfare in a sense, especially if it was aimed at governmental services, but even private services, because it could be an act of terrorism. It could create. Could you imagine if you go to your ATM and your account shows zero or you can't pull it out? I can list 1,000 parade of horribles. But you were the director of national intelligence. How big is this threat?
Look, remember when we go back to terrorism back in the early 2000s, what we quickly learned is that there are individuals that are committing acts of terror. It's not always specifically a government. There are non-government actors that rise up and do these types of activities. The same is true when it comes to cyber attacks. There's going to be a point where governments like China or Russia or others are going to pretend or say, well, we didn't do anything officially. But what we found the same way with terrorism is that when you allow safe haven within your country, when you allow people to formulate and begin to make way to collect the programs that are needed to launch attacks, when you look the other way, you are responsible. And I think that our laws are going to have to catch up. The public is going to have to catch up to recognize that it may not be a government entity coming after our cyber systems, but it absolutely could be individual actors within these governments. And we are going to have to batten down the hatches, so to speak, and make sure that all of our systems are protected. And that starts with the private sector.
We've also, Ric, learned this week, 2 years later, that the New York Times, they've now confirmed for the world that Hunter Biden's laptop and the emails on it and all the photos on it, that, oh, yeah, it really is his laptop, and it was verified as his laptop. He's under criminal investigation right now. But I want to play one of your colleagues, Pam Bondi, a former attorney general of Florida, during the impeachment. So 2 years ago, remember, the impeachment was all about Ukraine. Zelensky phone calls, Burisma, Hunter Biden's involvement there. Take a listen to Pam Bondi by 42.
When the House managers gave you their presentation, when they submitted their brief, they repeatedly referenced Hunter Biden and Burisma. They spoke to you for over 21 hours, and they referenced Biden or Burisma over 400 times. And when they gave these presentations, they said there was nothing to see. It was a sham. This is fiction.
So I remember that because I was one of the lead lawyers in that impeachment hearing, as most of you know, and the Ukraine issue was big, and the Democrats did raise this issue, Rick, and they were telling us that this was all smoke and mirrors. There was nothing to it, and of course the media went along with them. Now we find out, of course, shockingly, and this is all about Ukraine. This is what's so fascinating about where we are today. And the duplicity here is pretty unbelievable.
Look, I've been shouting about this from the moment that it happened. And let's remember Natasha Bertrand. We need to remember that name. She was working for Politico. She now works for CNN. She launched this story with 50 former U.S. intelligence officials saying that you should not look at Hunter Biden's laptop because it's Russian disinformation. Now, remember, that was exactly what the Chinese wanted you to say, because that laptop is filled with all sorts of evidence of the Biden family intermingled with Chinese business people. 10% for the big guy is the exact quote that Hunter Biden said, that when he is doing these deals, he needs to leave 10% for the big guy. Guess who the big guy is? We all know who the big guy is, but official Washington is not interested in finding out, did the big guy actually get the 10% that Hunter Biden said? I think that this is a huge crisis because it shows that Joe Biden is compromised. His family is compromised. 3 weeks before the election, you got 50 former U.S. intelligence officials saying, don't look at that. 3 weeks before the election, we don't want you looking at Hunter Biden's laptop because that's a little Russian disinformation. There wasn't a single piece of evidence to suggest it was Russian disinformation. They made it up, and every single person that signed that letter needs to be hauled in front of the Senate, hopefully when Republicans take over, and answer the question, why did you manipulate intelligence 3 weeks before an election for partisan gain?
Yeah, I mean, Rick, I remember that there's, and that was acknowledged by President Biden when he was vice president. He's leaving Ukraine. He says, if you better, this prosecutor who was going after Burisma, and he said that guy better be fired before I get on the plane, or else you're not going to get your funding. I mean, this was during the beginning of the Zelensky government, and as they were coming in, this new government, and he was trying to say it was about corruption. But what we find out is, like what you said, is so many foreign business deals and express emails by Hunter Biden saying, I want to get around the Foreign Agent Registration Act.
It's shocking, and we cannot have a country when our intelligence agencies and the Department of Justice are partisan. I think this is a real crisis, not just because the media is not covering it. We can accept the fact that the media aren't going to cover these stories anymore. They're activists. They're protecting the ruling party. But this is a crisis for the American people, because when our intelligence agencies and the Department of Justice are partisan actors who seek to do partisan activities during campaigns and presidential elections, this is a crisis. This is how governments and great institutions collapse.
You know, Rick, real quick here, of course, I lived that impeachment as one of the lead lawyers. And it is, to me, it's the irony that it's about Ukraine and Russia now are at it. And we're on the precipice of some, really difficult. It's already been horrible for the people of Ukraine. But I take it a step further here and saying that the media denial here at the outset of this was so baked in that they need to be held accountable. I'm not saying lawsuits. I'm just saying which we're doing, point out the duplicity of what goes on. It's like the way that I'm glad that our people don't treat the Supreme Court nominees like the Democrats treated ours, frankly, because I think they make a mockery of the whole process. But it's the same thing here with the media on this. Ukraine was the story. That was the basis of an impeachment proceeding, and yet they then ignore one of the bigger evidentiary points that were actually available, which they said was Russian disinformation. We've got less than a minute.
So I'm frustrated, Jay, because I hear you say, we got to take the high road and we got to be nice and everything. But I can do that in my personal life. And personally, I'm really, a nice person, and I'm never going to do that. But when you're in politics, I'm not sure that our team should be backing down from a fight or not utilizing every tool imaginable. You know, we don't ask the Yankees to play nice when they're in the World Series. We recognize that they go for it. And I'm ready to fight, and I'm ready to fight on this Supreme Court justice. I think that she's a disaster. I'm not going to back down.
No, and I think this is the issue. This is the focus too, as Rick said, which is important. Republicans take back the Senate. You can open up that fight to a whole new level.
Yes, 100%.
Because now this information, it's out there. There's no more, the denialism is done. So let's get to the bottom of it. There's a criminal investigation of the president's son, and the media doesn't talk about it. Rick, as always, we appreciate it.